You do.
It is exciting what we can do with technology in CWPPs now. So we were looking at the National Cohesive Strategy really as being this reference point for all of our partners to come together behind. And we were really encouraged by it because at the local level, we were embracing the concepts. And then our federal and state partners were kind of at a grassroots level from the agency employee level, which I think is really important. At the same time, we're getting supported by leadership to rally around these common concepts. And I think that's what really allowed us to incorporate these tenets into our community wildfire protection plan. Now, one thing, we actually have tiered documents in the Lake Tahoe Basin. So really our plan is our plan, but our local cohesive strategy is our multi-jurisdictional strategy. And this is a shorter document that kind of outlines our overall intentions and really in a simple and direct way incorporates the goals of the cohesive strategy. And one thing I want to point out, this is actually the second multi-jurisdictional strategy that we've produced, one in 2007 and another in 2014. And I think the differences pre- and post-cohesive strategy are shown really well in these comparisons of the wildland-urban interface designations. So back in 2007, I think it was a pretty common practice. We're buffering off of private property lines, and we end up with a wildland-urban interface that looks like the map on the left, where you can see it's that strip of forest land where it meets communities. But in actuality, we have many vacant lots, both large and small, some managed by the state, some managed privately. And our interface in Lake Tahoe is really an intermix. People's backyards in Lake Tahoe aren't lawns and flamingos. It's pine trees, it's blankets of pine needles, it's manzanita brush, where a fire could actually move through the community the same as it would in the forest. So what this change represents between 2007 and 2014 is we're taking it from this wildland-urban interface that we think of as being almost entirely federally owned, a little bit of state parks, to where now we have about an even distribution in the wildland-urban interface between private and government-owned land. And I think it shows that partnership that we need to be able to work together in conjunction, both private and government, in order to be able to move our forests, community forests and our general forests, into a condition that's resilient to fire. So our community wildfire protection plan is really our implementation plan for our local cohesive strategy.
Say that again.
And what that, it's the community wildfire protection plan is our implementation plan for our local cohesive strategy.
Thank you.
Did that make any sense, or is that still really confusing?
Well, a little bit. It's a little different cake, so I'm listening.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So this, let's see. Our multi-jurisdictional strategy is a brief document outlining our overall intentions to work together among agencies and with the public and other stakeholder groups to attain the same three goals of the National Cohesive Strategy. And the Community Wildfire Protection Plan then goes into detail into how that will actually be accomplished. One thing we wanted to do is to make sure that the document was approachable from a lot of different audiences. So it's a big document, but it's structured in a way we're hoping that can be gone into more depth for either particular geographic areas or particular topics. And I have to say, the $2,000 we spent on the designer was the best money we spent on the development of this plan. And really, when we hand it to somebody, they're actually willing to take a look at it and flip through it, and it's been really helpful with that. And I think being able to budget some money for design early on in the process is really important. So we have some general mitigation strategies that apply to the entire Lake Tahoe Basin, where we're tying it into previous planning documents and to the cohesive strategy. But in order to provide some contextual information that's actually useful for local land managers and community members, we dive into things in a little bit more detail into our divisions of the Tahoe Fire and Fuels team. And so for each of those 5 divisions, we have division assessments. And those contain 2 things, our prioritized fuel reduction projects and also our community-based action plans. So our project maps and tables of our prioritized fuel reduction projects really go into the history of what's been done where and what needs to be done next. And I wanted to touch real quick on the prioritization because it's always this tough balance between identifying too much and then you haven't really prioritized and identifying too little and then that flexibility is reduced. Because really I think that prioritization needs to be flexible. Prioritization may vary depending on what grant source is being used. For instance, if we have a community that is active and engaged and we have other fuel reduction projects through the Forest Service happening, well then that project may become our priority above something else where we may be able to get less done as a whole to move communities closer to being fire adapted. And I'm going to skip by the discussion of the West-wide risk analysis because of time. But I think there's some interesting, very useful and usable GIS products out there, including the West-wide risk analysis and things like that were initiated by Texas with TexRAP. And I think it's a useful topic to revisit is some of the GIS data available for project prioritization. And then for each of the divisions, we developed community action plans. And you may recognize this because this is actually an adapted version of the Fire Adapted Community Self-Assessment Tool. And this was the most useful process that we went through during the development of the plans for community engagement. We worked really hard to involve residents, property managers, we had real estate representatives, improvement districts, HOAs, coming together within these different geographic divisions to develop action plans that aren't just purely agency focused like a lot of times we've had and seen in the past, but things and actions that the entire community can work on, business community, nonprofits. And we were able to come up with really great action plans that we're working on implementing right now. And that, to me, represents the shift in focus from simply do some projects and create some defensible space. That's incredibly useful. But to move towards that more general picture of what being fire adapted is, it requires that participation from a wide variety of groups. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Forrest.